I'm your host, Marshall Hayner, and today I have a very special guest, Tone Vays. Welcome, Tone.
Hey, Marshall. Thanks for having me on. It's been a while. I think we met back in like 2014. So it's probably one of the first people I've met on the speaking circuit when I started.
That's right. We go way back. We're crypto OGs and different tribes, but similar vibes. And yeah, it's for those that don't know, Tone and I were very early into this space when there was I think Coinbase had just started and nobody took Bitcoin seriously. Nobody took us seriously, and look at us now, right? But look at the space in general. It's incredible. Before we started the show, I was just telling Tone, you know, the OCC, the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, just a few days ago declared that crypto assets can be custodied by any OCC banks, which are, you know, all the National Association of Banks. These are the top banks. This is your Bank of America, Chase, Citibank can now custody crypto. It's a really heavy move for a new director who just stepped in recently, and you know, I applaud Brian Brooks for taking these risks. What do you think about it, Tone?
Yeah, you know, I haven't. We're going to talk about the story on my podcast tomorrow, so I haven't had really.
Okay, I'll save it.
No. I haven't really had a chance to read up on it fully, but I mean, it sounds good. A lot of these banks aren't probably going to be interested anytime soon. They still have to figure out how to do Bitcoin security. But it sounds like something that Fidelity already started doing last year. So now it's just the banks have to follow a little more regulation. But yeah, it's like some of the financial institutions already started doing this. But now it's just going to be, you know, clearer from a regulatory perspective. And it's not even that this news is directly interesting. I like that this news is indirectly interesting because myself included, some of the first articles I wrote in 2014, I was basically always careful about how I interact with Bitcoin because of my fear that the government will eventually crack down on Bitcoin from a legal perspective, you know, declare all of us criminals and declare Bitcoin transactions illegal, kind of like the way marijuana has been illegal, you know, for like 40 years or whatever it was. But with each of these legislations, with every single step forward that Wall Street takes into Bitcoin, it becomes harder and harder and harder for the government to then do a full 180 and say you're all criminals. So it's good indirectly. Like once the CME futures started trading Bitcoin as a commodity in their futures market, that told me, wow, now that Wall Street is going to be, and their lobbyists are in, as those futures pick up more and more volume and more liquidity, and they start generating revenue for the financial sector, it's going to be very difficult for the government to ban Bitcoin.
Exactly, and I just gave an interview about this, about, you know, what is the possibility of banning Bitcoin, and at this point, it would be extremely hard from a policy and from a tech perspective to ban Bitcoin, not only because of all the financial institutions that have adopted it, but also from a technology perspective. You know, China, for example, the CCP is like the ultimate banner of information and things. And my wife is from China, and when I go to visit in China, I send Bitcoin transactions, I send crypto transactions. It's just like Facebook, it's hard to block. And so from a technology perspective, you know, to literally cut off Bitcoin in the United States, you would have to police or essentially shut off the internet to an extent, or create such a firewall that would make it impossible to use some of the apps we love. And it's kind of scary because in some ways it feels like we're going there a little bit, right, with the TikTok ban and other things like that. But these are kind of more matters of national security. But I would say, you know, with Bitcoin, it's such a piece of the internet. It's like email. To take it away would really be a crime, in my opinion. And I guess that's a good segue to kind of our next topic, which is, you know, Bitcoin maximalism versus altcoins. Tone's favorite topic, one of my favorite topics. This is where Tone and I are going to spar and maybe disagree, but ultimately we have the same kind of mentality and vision. We're friends, so friends disagree, it's okay. But yeah, so on the topic of maximalism, what do you think, Tone? What do you think is the future of Bitcoin, the future of scaling? Do you think another coin will ever supersede Bitcoin? Do you think that Do you think that federal regulators will come around more to Bitcoin or focus more on CBDC, like central bank digital currencies? What do you think the future is? Because, 6 years ago when we met, it was all up in the air. We really had no idea what was going to happen. And there were people still trading alpaca socks. Local Bitcoins was still a thing. Coinbase, people didn't even know what that was. And now it's huge, right? So where do you think the future is for Bitcoin, Tom?
Yeah, so let me give a very quick intro of myself. I didn't do that in our first question. My name is Tone Vays. I've been in this space since 2013, public since 2014. Mostly traveled the world, speak at conferences, but you can see how many days I've now been stuck without the ability to global travel. Kind of sucks. So still focusing on the podcast. We have a news show. We have a law show. I used to run a podcast called Crypto Scam, where I used to expose a lot of these old coins. Also, mostly, people watch me for trading because I do have experience as a trader. I teach trading, and most of my shows are about technical analysis and trading. So what's my view? So the term Bitcoin maximalist, it just makes no sense. It's another word that Vitalik made up. I think Vitalik has made up thousands of words over the years of his writings and speaking. No one calls him out on it because no one knows what they mean. So the term makes no sense. I should go grab my hat. I have a hat that says shitcoin minimalist. That's more of the right term for this. Because right now I am looking at coin market cap and I'm looking at over 3,000 coins. And that's not even counting the coins that they have removed. Here's my view on it. Satoshi invented something incredible. He solved a problem. Bitcoin wasn't the start of anything. Bitcoin was the end to a computer science problem some of the smartest people had given up solving. How do you have digital finality? How do you solve the double spending problem? How do you hit a send button on digital data and you lose possession of that digital data? And Satoshi solved the problem. In solving the problem, he quickly recognized that the best use for this digital data is going to be money. And if he's going to create digital money for the modern age, he chose to do it with an economic model, or I guess a money supply model, mimicking gold. Because gold's been money for a long time, but gold was no longer very useful in the 20th century with modern technology. So he chose to make Bitcoin finite with 21 million Bitcoin. And since that day, not right away, it took about a year before people actually realized what the hell Bitcoin was. But then, starting in around 2011, people realized, wait a minute, I can just copy and paste the code, change a couple of lines, and I too can create my own money. The problem is, there's several problems here. So first of all, I think creating your own money is wrong. A lot of people think that they if the government has the ability to print money, they should also have the ability to print money. And which I think is wrong. I think no one should have the ability to print money, but certainly not every single person in the world. I also believe that the average person is not capable of running monetary policy, because even the people in charge of the Federal Reserve of Zimbabwe do have degrees in economics and monetary theory, and we still have Zimbabwe. So if you think some guy on Reddit who has an anonymous Twitter handle and a picture of a cat can do a better job than than an economics PhD running the Bank of Zimbabwe, then you are the one that's crazy, because you can. They are smarter, and they still created the currency of Zimbabwe. So that's the other problem with it. But right now, everyone is printing their own money. Then, mostly, I guess, promoted by Ethereum. So Ethereum built a platform that now allowed you to create what I consider, unregistered securities that also serve as money.
So as we were previously discussing, ethics around creating your own money, creating your own commodity. I personally got involved with Bitcoin because I love the idea of the freedom to have competing currency. I think that, in politics, we should have a multi-party system. I'm done with this two-party system. I'm done with this, one currency system, especially when you look at, and Tone mentioned Zimbabwe. My thoughts are a little bit different than Tone's, and I think we both greatly respect each other. I think that, my vision is that, and Tone mentioned, you shouldn't allow someone on Reddit to become, the chairman of the Central Bank of Zimbabwe. But I believe that we should. I believe that everybody should have a chance at this. And I think that when it comes to enforcement, I think it's going to become easier and easier because with regulation, you can require registrations. And when you give these clear legal definitions at the federal level, commodity, currency, security, and then attach the primary regulators of SEC, CFTC, FinCEN, Treasury, right? You are creating a licensing regime where it can be monitored. And hey, it can be taxed, right? And that can bring in more money. I think my theory on it is criminals are always going to do criminal things. And just because a new powerful tool came out, the gun has arrived. Should we ban all guns? No, in my opinion, no. But there are some people out there that would say, that would be giving people too much power and we should ban guns in America. I'm much more of a freedom-loving kind of guy and saying that, give people these rules, but enforce regulation.
Sorry. That's actually completely different. But you said something earlier. I'm tired of one currency. Thousands of currencies, not thousands. We have hundreds of currencies and thousands of cryptocurrencies, right? So we don't have one. One is actually good. One is actually good. One is not bad because there are certain things you want one of, right? We want one internet. You don't want two internets. Do you want to pay two internet bills? If you want to do a video chat, you have to use this internet. And if you want to watch YouTube, you have to use a different internet, right? You want one internet. You want one electric grid, all right? Do you want multiple electric grids? That's not something you want, right? You don't want half of your things on one electric grid and the other half of the things, two electric grids, and now you got to run two different sets of wires for two different electric grids, right? Do we really want, we're doing it now, right? We're driving, half the world drives on one side of the road, and the other half the world drives on a different side of the road, right? Is that do we want that choice? Is it great? No, it's a freaking disaster. It's terrible. It causes lives and it creates enormous inefficiency, right? Why does a car manufacturer have to build two identical but different cars? Do they really want to do that? Half the cars for one world, half for the other. So you want one. You want one thing that works. I hate traveling the world and constantly converting currency. That's just dumb. I want one thing that works everywhere. So you want one thing. You want Bitcoin. Bitcoin creates efficiency. Now, the reason why Bitcoin is okay to be the single world currency is because nobody controls Bitcoin. And that goes to the other topic as to why it will end up being Bitcoin because no one controls it. Everything else to me is centralized and has leaders. So this is how I break down the crypto space. We have other proof of work coins, which are direct competitors to Bitcoin. This is your Monero, this is your Litecoin. By the way, I put this Venn diagram together at least 2 years ago. So something like Cardano didn't even exist. So obviously it's not in the Venn diagram. EOS didn't even launch, but I already knew about it and I knew which bucket to put it in. And so I break it down with direct Bitcoin competitors that have proof of work. We have proof of other stuff like proof of stake, proof of importance. That's this garbage right here, NEM, proof of other. So this is your proof of stake stuff and whatever that's not proof of work. These are your ICOs and airdrops. Reggie Middleton wasn't, I don't know if he was arrested or not, but he was definitely in trouble with the SEC.
Yeah.
This was before that happened. Still waiting what's going to happen with Civic. Augur was one of the first big ICOs on Ethereum. So this is your ICOs and airdrops, and these are your database layers. This is your something like Ripple, something like R3, Hyperledger. Now, R3 and Hyperledger don't have a token. So they are true DLTs, decentralized ledger technology, which is not really a blockchain to me because it has no proof of work, but that's okay. But then you have Ethereum, which is proof of work and an ICO and a database layer. Then you have EOS, which is not proof of work at all. So it's in the proof of stake bucket. Cardano would be exactly where EOS is. They're identical. There's really no difference in Cardano and EOS other than the underlying code base. They pretty much function exactly the same. And no one uses EOS, so why on earth do people think that someone's going to use Cardano is beyond my understanding. So EOS is not in the proof of work bucket, but it's in the proof of stake bucket. It was also an ICO, and it's a database layer, and you kind of get the point. Now, BitShares is both proof of work and proof of stake, and it was an ICO, and it's a database layer. So we can go through it. These things on the border, they are proof of work, but they are also proof of stake. And Dash had an Instamine where the creator just got rich off the bat. So anyway, so that's how I break down the space. None of this can even come close to competing with Bitcoin because the only things that are actually money are things in this realm here, Monero and Litecoin. And no one cares about privacy, and Bitcoin's privacy will be good enough. And no one needs Litecoin because of Lightning. So there you go, no silver to Bitcoin's gold needed. So one of my favorites, Aurora Coin, made it to number 2 on CoinMarketCap. You were around for that, Marshall, I'm sure.
I was.
Number 2, I have a screenshot where Aurora Coin was number 2 on CoinMarketCap, above Ethereum, above Litecoin, above it all. I don't know, about 350 or something.
Oh, that's not too bad. It's still around.
Well, no,
it's still
Paycoin's like 400.
Is that still around?
Yeah. Yeah, still around.
That's crazy.
Yeah, Paycoin's still around. So anyway, so that's how I break down the space. And so I don't really, like to me, this is a big problem. And most of these people have already gotten away with it. A lot of people are still going to get away with it because there's plenty of regulation already on the books that could have stopped a lot of this nonsense, but no one chose or cared to enforce the regulation, nor did the regulators understand what's going on. And one of my concerns, and this is where we get to the HR 6154, which because you assisted in putting that bill together, and you believe that anyone should have the ability to print money and then let the free market decide. And that is very, very concerning for me. And when your views of that start entering bills, I find that very concerning.
And for the record, in the bill, it doesn't say anything about my personal opinions or anything like that. It's not part of the bill. But the what it does say is it's focused. The bill is the Cryptocurrency Act 2020 is focused around breaking legal definitions of digital assets into 3 categories. One is crypto commodities, one is crypto securities, and one is cryptocurrencies. And I also point out in the bill we refer to cryptocurrencies as stable coins because that's kind of like the true definition, in my opinion, of currency. When we say currency, we're thinking of usually fiat dollars. So yeah, if you scroll down, you'll see here. So crypto commodity, and there's these sub classifications: having full or substantial fungibility. The markets treat with no regard as to who produced the goods or services, and rest on a blockchain or decentralized cryptographic ledger. Now, with cryptocurrency, this is I tried to change the terminology because unfortunately I think we've been referring to everything as cryptocurrency, and that's sort of like saying everything on the road is a car, when in fact we have motorcycles, we have trucks, we have all kinds of vehicles, and they require, as you know, different licenses, right? So cryptocurrency, I broke it down into 2 types of currency. I had actually contemplated doing 3 because I anticipate the third one being a sovereign currency like the US dollar, and that's a central bank digital currency. But we decided not to put it in there because it was too much in this bill. But two areas for cryptocurrencies, such as synthetic cryptocurrencies and then reserve and asset-backed cryptocurrencies. And this is important because I think about the FTC and claims of, consumer complaints that could arise from synthetic cryptocurrencies. I think they're very interesting, but I also think they can simultaneously be very dangerous if not fully audited and then not given the full disclosure. So, for example, I'm a big fan of DAI. At the same time, I think that users need to know that DAI is not backed by dollars, right? So if the peg should collapse for any reason, there is no underlying asset. In the case of reserve-backed, these are usually currencies like USDC or PAX or BUSD or Gemini, GUSD Gemini dollar, and they're backed with a corresponding bank account in fiat dollars. And then also,
I don't have a problem with those. So
yeah.
What you define as a cryptocurrency, I don't have a problem with that. Of course, that part has to be regulated because I would like for Tether to be regulated. So there is an actual, the money is there, right? Like the backing.
Correct. Well, that actually, in my opinion, the biggest risk to Bitcoin, and people ask me this all the time. People ask me, could you kill Bitcoin? And I know your thoughts on it, that, nobody owns it. But if I wanted to destroy Bitcoin and I had all the government powers in the world, I would just shut down Bitmain and I would basically, ban Bitcoin trading in the U.S. And that would
Bitmain is shutting themselves down. They're a zombie company. They're going to die. That's not going to do it. That really won't matter.
Okay, well, debatable, but I would go after the biggest miner. I think that the mining, in my opinion, mining is a weak point. But what I would say is the biggest risk outside of that, right, is unregulated stablecoin, or what I call unregulated cryptocurrency. And I made a point in the bill of not only giving the legal definitions, but assigning the primary regulators. So now once we have the definitions and the primary regulators, now we can start to draft legislation around licensing and stuff like that. And now these regulators can create different types of licenses for different types of assets with having those sub-classifications, because previously we didn't have that. So I think that is really important, Tone. And I do see that as a big threat to cryptocurrency because, and I'm not trying to throw shade on, Bitfinex or Tether. I think that they're very cool. But at the same time, I think that it was not good that Tether represented that they were fully reserved when in fact they were not. And this is part of the New York Attorney General dispute right now, right, with Tether. And that could cause a problem, as you know, Tone, because if that wasn't backed and people were treating it as backed, you could greatly manipulate the price of Bitcoin, other digital assets, and so forth with assets that are not backed. And that is where you get your true tulip bubble collapsing type scenario, right?
I completely agree. But your point A makes perfect sense. Point B, to me, is a big problem because everything you just described is exactly what this is. Stablecoins determined by oracles or smart contracts is the Tether without the backing. That's all it is. It's Correct. A guy creating the DAI token or some other token just because he wrote some code. There's no backing whatsoever. It's completely centralized, and you can use this to manipulate anything you like. There's absolutely no regulation. And there's
so this is interesting, Tone. So I included this in there, and the way that I feel about synthetic stablecoins, synthetic cryptocurrencies, is I'm very excited about them. I think it's very interesting from a computer science challenge and concepts, but I also think that it poses some extreme risks. And for example, like multi-collateral DAI, it does have collateral, but those collaterals may, it's a debate. Are they too risky to give stability to a synthetic dollar? And so in the bill, when I crafted the bill, I got a lot of flack for this from the synthetic cryptocurrencies. So for example, Tether would have said that they were 2A. They were cryptocurrency fully backed. But then it turns out that they are synthetic backed. They're actually 2B, right? And what's interesting is in this bill is that I gave an exemption, a securities exemption to 2B to say that synthetic cryptocurrencies are not securities. But in my bill, I assigned the primary regulator, and you're going to like this one, Tone, as the SEC. And I got a lot of flack for that because, I talked to other synthetic cryptocurrency companies that had created synthetic cryptocurrencies and decentralized organizations that are building them, and they didn't like that. But at the same time, I think that synthetic cryptocurrencies and derivatives should be allowed to exist, and that experimentation should be allowed to happen, but it should have extreme scrutiny.
But you see, again, this is where you and I disagree, because you're throwing terms out there that I disagree with. Decentralized organizations, they don't exist. Like, there's no such thing as a decentralized organization. The closest the world has to decentralization is Bitcoin. That's it. It ends there. There's nothing else. Like, Ethereum is not a decentralized organization. It's a centralized organization ran by the Ethereum Foundation, with Vitalik where Vitalik is the leader. That's it. It's Cardano is a centralized organization where Charles Hoskinson is the leader. It's Dan Larimer is the leader of 3 companies, right? He walked away from Steemit, and no one cares about Steemit anymore because it no longer has a leader, right? Well, like, there's no such thing as a useful project in crypto space without a leader other than Bitcoin.
Couldn't an argument be made, though, Tone, that the maintainer of the Bitcoin core Git is the leader?
No.
Why not?
Because they don't actually have control of anything. Because we have already proven that miners do not really matter as much as they thought they did with the user-activated soft fork. And if there is something in the code that the users don't like, they will never accept that code. It becomes irrelevant. But when it comes to something like Ripple, if there is something in the code that the Ripple users don't like, no one cares. The Ripple users are actually irrelevant. It's the Ripple company decides what's in the code, and the only node in Ripple that matters is the node at the Ripple Corporation. So there is nothing anyone can do if that entity changes the code. But in Bitcoin, that change will never be acted upon if the users don't agree with it. So that person with the key, and it's not one person, it's split between 5 people, and they rotate. Some people lose permission, new people that deserving get permission, and there is a democratic-ish process that decides who gets these keys. It's not democratic on Reddit. It's more democratic by smart people. So as an example, if for the neighborhood that I'm living in relies on nuclear energy and a nuclear reactor needs to be built, I would like for, the plans to build this nuclear reactor as to where it's going to be built. I would like for nuclear scientists to vote on it, and only nuclear scientists, right? And geologists, right? Not random people.
That's fair.
Not random people that go fishing for a living, right? So it is a democratic process, but it's a democratic process based on your ability to understand what you're actually voting on. So
and amongst experts,
that's basically the main difference. Yes, it's decided upon by experts, and so I don't believe that there's anything else in crypto that is decentralized, and it's only a matter of time before it's proven. Now, Ethereum proved they're not decentralized after the DAO hack, and yet people once again believe that Ethereum's decentralized. And if another DAO hack occurs, I mean, they choose not to do anything because of how bad they looked in the DAO hack. But if they wanted to, they could.
Well, Vitalik was on the DAO advisory board, right, for some period of time. And that was definitely a learning lesson, I think, for a lot of early crypto people about taking advisory roles and things like that, with the risks that you could take on with different areas. This is really interesting. Tone and I are very similar, and we're very different at the same time, where we agree on some things and disagree on others. I personally feel that I am in agreement that these things should really be decided on by the experts. At the same time, I do think that there should be some public discourse, right? And I also believe that no cryptocurrency has, in my mind, and I guess my standards are very high, achieved really true decentralization, not even Bitcoin. But I do believe each cryptocurrency has achieved certain levels of decentralization, and they're in various stages. And you mentioned Ripple is a good example with their unique node list. that system could theoretically become much more decentralized, but the company does have a lot of control of it. And also, it's worth pointing out that in the current state that we're in, and when I say state, I mean the times, which are very early times in blockchain and cryptocurrency, is that that a lot of these things haven't really had much time, only a few years to really kind of, even in financial terms, 10 years is not so much time for it's still a young currency, right? So I think that we will see over time other projects achieve that level of decentralization that is really hard to achieve. But I think that many have not really had, and these are just my opinions, have had sufficient time yet.
Before we jump to number 3, crypto security, which is what my entire law show is usually about, I want to jump back to number 1, crypto commodity, which is what Bitcoin is.
Sure.
And the term crypto commodity means economic goods or services, including derivatives that A, have full or substantial fungibility, B, the markets treat with no regard as to who produced the good or service, the rest on a blockchain or decentralized cryptographic ledger. So I have no problem with A or B. So obviously many crypto commodities, I guess, fit this bill. Bitcoin, Litecoin, Monero, several others.
Metal,
but several
Proton.
Others are, what did you say?
Metal and Proton. Other crypto commodities. I'm not trying to put. That's just my quote, not your quote.
I'm not familiar with those. But anyway, maybe. So I can't comment. Now, number 2 gets a little bit interesting. The market treats with no regard as to who produced the goods or services. Now, here's the thing. We know Charlie Lee produced Litecoin, right? And that is probably the most decentralized, most spread out altcoin we have. Now, I believe Litecoin is pretty damn centralized. The mining on Litecoin is incredibly centralized. There's not that many nodes. I don't know how many developers control the code, but it can't possibly be more than 3. I believe that Litecoin is incredibly centralized, and we do know who produced it. Now, Charlie Lee did create it in a way that he did not, keep 20% of all the Litecoin in existence. However, other crypto commodities have. Zcash, for example, kept 20% of all the Zcash that ever created. They didn't create it all.
And also have a block subsidy on the mining rewards, 10%.
Well, that's what it is, right?
And I'm not trying to throw any shade. I like Zuko. I like the Zcash team. Just pointing out.
I don't, but that's beyond the point. But so again, where do we stand? Do we just classify something as a crypto commodity where the creator gets to keep 20%? Where's the cutoff? Does the creator? Well, what if the next guy keeps 33%? And the one after that keeps 50%, like what happened with Dash, right? So what does that mean? The market treats it with no regard as to who produced it. Like, does the creator?
So you would like to see a subclause 1B, 1BI or 1B1? How much that the supposed creator or originator of this commodity could keep for themselves in a Genesis block.
And here's the thing, and why are they keeping it for themselves, right? And the answer in the case of Zcash was, well, if we don't keep 20% of all the money we're creating, how are we going to pay people to work on the project, right? So you're basically inventing money to give yourself and a bunch of people jobs.
But isn't that wait, hold on, Tone.
The government printing money.
I was just about to say, isn't that the same as the dollar? And isn't that the intention of, the crypto commodity, most crypto commodities is that they function as a commodity currency, right? Like gold.
Well, but here's the thing. It's a little bit different. Now, granted, there are a fair number of jobs that are created directly to print the money, right? I mean,
right,
like
by the Federal Reserve, right?
Right. Well, more like the Treasury, but yes.
Sure.
We do have like giant departments that are profiting from working on the creation of money. However, the U.S. dollar is not only necessary to run America, it's actually necessary to run the world, right? So the ratio of the number of people that benefit from the creation by having jobs printing the dollars versus the number of people around the world that benefit from the dollar's existence is very, very disproportionate. On the flip side, when it comes to something like Zcash, the amount of people that benefit from Zcashes by building Zcash is probably larger than the amount of people that benefit from Zcash's existence. You see the difference?
Yeah, but I do. And I guess my counter argument to that would be that at any time these things could change, right? And that's kind of the way it was, email in 1991 was what's email. Email in 2001 was you don't have email. And so that could very rapidly change. But I do see the difference. And also, for example, there are other parts of the world. Let's throw USD out the window for a second, and let's talk about Zimbabwe dollar, right? That would be a case where you may actually have government officials grossly enriched, way beyond any altcoin ever could have dreamed of, right? Where they were 99%.
Debatable. They can't put money fast enough for themselves that isn't worth anything, right? Which I also believe is the future to a lot of these altcoins. Like eventually Litecoin and Zcash, they will have to go proof of stake. They have no choice. Their mining will die because no one's going to be mining.
That has been an issue, right? Remember Dogecoin, I think about a year after we met and Dogecoin started end of 2013, Dogecoin ran into some issues.
Yeah, we were actually hanging out in San Francisco with
That's right. That's right. We were all having a beer, I think at the Alchemist or something, right? And
that's right.
Crypto OG times. But, I don't think that there's anything wrong with it. I think it's just kind of natural that the technology evolves over time, right? And Bitcoin may emerge to be the proof of work king, right? And you saw that. I brought up Dogecoin because that's what happened with Dogecoin when they got very close to a 51% attack. They worked together with the Litecoin Foundation and created merge mining into Dogecoin and saved it. So I think in many ways you might be right. You might see a future in which Bitcoin becomes the dominant proof of work player. But there's no guarantee that, Bitcoin core team will allow other coins to merge mine or things like that, right?
No, it's not their choice.
Right, the miners, yeah.
Other coins are already being merge mined with Bitcoin. Evercoin
that's true.
Is one of them. There's others. Eventually, every coin will merge mine with Bitcoin because that's where all the mining is going to go. Okay, and the last point.
Proof of work mining, worth pointing out, proof of work mining.
Yeah. Well, I don't really consider anything else mining, but to me they're one and the same.
Sure.
Rest on a blockchain or decentralized cryptographic ledger. This is, I have a lot of problems with the statement. I don't know if we have time to get into it. To me, the only blockchain that matters is a proof of work blockchain. Other than that, it's a distributed database. That's it. It's a database with multiple admins. If you are not proof of work, then there's no innovation there. So I'm not really sure what C means. Maybe you can briefly explain it, but I don't think I'm going to debate you on it. I want to move on to crypto security.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, exactly kind of what you think. I mean, we're birds of a feather, but simultaneously we disagree on certain things. And so I believe that there's more than just proof of work, and I believe that proof of stake has a lot of potential. I believe in delegated proof of stake. I think, there's proof of authority, which is showing promise. And then you have, your DLTs like Hyperledger, like R3 Corda. I do believe that these things can become digital commodities, crypto commodities. I do believe they can function in currencies. And I also greatly agree with Tone in that many of the proof of stake currencies do suffer of a bit of an identity crisis between, are you gold or are you oil? Do you power the car or are you hoarded as a commodity currency, right? And I do believe it could be both, but I think that the UX for the consumer is very difficult. I think the future is really around these cryptocurrencies. When I say cryptocurrency, I mean stable coins. And then I also do believe that your crypto commodities will have value, but it's more the way that people treat Robinhood. They're really kind of, hoarding it. because they see that utility or future value. And maybe in the case of, you mentioned like Link, they're, shilling it or whatever. Or recently with Dogecoin and TikTok, which I found to be very funny. I thought that was very cool that people went out there and had that first experience and got to play with it. But I do believe that any commodity that rests on this ledger, whether it's proof of work, proof of stake, delegated proof of stake, proof of authority, or what have you, as long as it's using public-private key cryptography and some sort of chain to link it, it does, in my definition, fall under the crypto commodity. That's just my opinion.
All right, and as we discussed earlier, I believe that every single ICO, including Ethereum, that gave us a platform for more ICOs, I believe all of them are securities, and they should be following securities law. And they are very nasty securities in that the current securities, so there's two things to current securities. One, you're not really supposed to have a security that could be invested by the general public until after you already have some kind of a product, customer's actual thing. That's one issue with it. And the other thing on crypto securities is that, it's done in regulated trading. So I don't have a problem with, today's security laws. But to me, what's happening is bad. You're selling a token, which is basically a security, before you ever start your product. And people can already speculate on it, pump and dump it before you ever build the product. And that's a problem. That's how people get poorer, not richer.
This is where Tone and I completely 100% agree. And I believe, and you referenced Howie in the beginning of our conversation. This is where I believe, if a new blockchain is to be built, it really shouldn't have some form of public ICO, in my opinion. ICO was something that came from bitcointalk.org, I think maybe around 2013 or 2014. And it was a take on the word IPO, which is initial public offering. So ICO kind of denotes public offering. And in my opinion, the proper way for a new blockchain to emerge would be to just like any other tech company, fintech company, is to raise money through a private offering to accredited investors for equity in the company and prove your value first, or bootstrap it and do it off your own existing funds that you already have. You really can't sell the oranges before they're grown and say it's not a security. So I completely agree with Tone. And in that same vein, for example, Blockstack is an interesting one because they got a no action letter and performed a Reg A plus and did actually offer a public ICO with the SEC approval. So I think that there is a path forward to that as well under Reg D and Reg CF and Reg A plus. So I think there is a process for it, but in that case, you have to register with the SEC. You have to conduct the sale through a licensed SEC portal. And I also want to point out Tone's background used to trade a lot of securities prior to entering Bitcoin. You did a lot of trading in securities markets, right? Right.
But you mentioned something important. Once you are actually a security, you have to trade on regulated markets, right? So
yes,
like the Block One token is not going to be traded on Binance. It's not going to be, traded on Poloniex. It's not going to be trading on, what a Hobie. So that's the important part. If your token is being traded on unregistered, websites, you have a problem.
That's correct. And you have to have an alternative trade. I mean, in the U.S. and securities law varies between countries, but you have to have in the U.S. if you're falling under SEC jurisdiction, you have to have what's known as an ATS, alternative trading system, or broker-dealer license, and that's overseen by the SEC for all securities trading. So you have to have that classification. So it is really important that that's put into place. And so, for example, with like Binance, I think that with Binance, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense if it wasn't live. So, for example, something that is an ERC20 or some sort of digital asset that's a placeholder to what may exist in the future, that is indeed a security, right? And in that case, it would have to trade on a T0, or NASDAQ would have to open up to it. And I think this is kind of some of the very early beginning parts. And so for people that are watching this, if you were building a blockchain, if you were launching something, that would be the wrong way to launch it, right? Conducting an ICO of something that's not built, raise money first for a private equity, you want to be your metal, you want to be your Blockstream or even, for example, Block One, they should have raised equity first. And then if they were going to maintain some ownership of the Genesis block, of the crypto commodity that they created, that could only, they should only have the right and ability to exercise that after the system is showing sufficient decentralization. In my opinion, that's at the point that the free market proves it. And the point of this bill was to apply regulators for it. So it doesn't have to be the SEC. It can be the CFTC. It can be other. And then, for example, with cryptocurrency, I believe it should be FinCEN and Treasury. But there should be a regulator for each one. And there's nothing wrong with being a crypto security. There's nothing wrong with having security-like elements. But in that case, for you to be traded legally, it would have to be under an ATS or broker-dealer. And Coinbase obtained their broker-dealer license, I think, for the fear that maybe some of the things they thought might be commodities might in fact turn out to be securities. And there's nothing wrong with being a security.
Not some. It's not some. Most.
But who knows what they may think or may not think. And I'm laughing because I think it's funny how early we are to all of this. I think that many things are still relatively centralized, but are striving for decentralization. But I do think that, and there's also with crypto security, it's worth pointing out that I see two baskets. I see a basket in the what is it? There's a hotel in Aspen that securitized that turned their security, that tokenized their securities. And you could also have like Overstock.com tokenize their securities. That's the one basket where you were a traded stock, and then you went to go trade, and you also tokenize your security. Coinbase, I hear, is talking about doing that prior to their IPO. And then there's your other crypto security, which also has two sub baskets: crypto commodities and digital assets that had no intention of being a security, and then digital assets that had intention of being a security, right? And I think the trickiest one are the ones that had no intention of being a security. And these are your DAOs. This is your early Ethereum and things like that. I think that there really should, I really like Hester Pierce's work, because I think that there should be a clear pathway to launching a crypto commodity correctly. And I think that we should have guidance at the federal level as to how to do that. And I think having these types of conversations ultimately are really good. Certainly there's ethically and morally wrong and right, but I think that right now there isn't really, we know what we think are the ethically wrong, but I think that there's no real technical definition of what's the right way. And also from the regulatory and policy side, how would one go about that? And I think that having having a bill like Cryptocurrency Act 2020 is really good, because I think it can not only help banks and card processors get comfortable with Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, but can give the future entrepreneurs and computer scientists and technologists the ability to experiment and not have to worry so much about unclear policy, right?
Yeah.
Hey, we're in agreement.
Well, kind of agreement there, but we're about to start disagreeing. I just want to go with two more parts. I know this podcast is running long. So just the last two
great,
parts.
Though. Yeah.
So you're defining what it means to be decentralized. Decentralized cryptographic ledger. The term decentralized cryptographic ledger means a ledger that has all of these things. Now, I just read them over. And so here's where some of our disagreement is actually going to happen. So you're saying runs a standalone blockchain that is secured through a mining mechanism, such as proof of work, proof of stake. Proof of stake is not a mining mechanism. See,
it says minting.
Oh, sorry, minting mechanism. Again, proof of stake is not like proof of work. So
it is a minting mechanism, though. Mining mechanism, maybe not so much. I mean, that's debatable, but it's a minting mechanism.
Right, but a minting mechanism could be me giving away coins, right? Like that's
sure.
Yeah.
So could be a mechanism. Yeah.
Okay. So several things. And we'll go through them. Runs a cryptographic as smart contract. So I read through these. So over here, you're talking about a minting mechanism, which is mining or staking. And here you're talking about nodes, which is fine. Is not controlled by any one entity, defined as having less than half of all, defined as having, not controlled, defined as.
This
Okay,
is kind of geared. This is geared towards the 51% argument.
Right. Again, I see. Here's the thing. I think you're conflicting two things here. This is where I would have written this very, very differently. So 51% of
it's still open for comment, by the way, so it can be changed. But, go ahead.
51% of tax apply to mining, and they don't really matter. In Bitcoin, they don't. So here's how I defined decentralization on my podcast the other day. I need to write an article about it. So Bitcoin decentralization, to me, is a triangle. And there are three vertices on this triangle. One of them is mining. One of them is fully validating nodes that are not mining. And the third one is writing of the code. Now, when it comes to, obviously, each one has its own complexity. Mining, some mining is more important than others. Mining nodes are also regular fully validating nodes, but there are so many more fully validating nodes that they drown out, like the mining nodes. There are 100 times, 1,000 times more fully validating nodes than mining nodes. Fully validating nodes, some of those nodes are more economic than others. My node for the Tone Vays business is not as important as a Coinbase's node. But Coinbase's node is not enough because them and the miners colluded and they still fail. So these are two parts of the decentralization of Bitcoin. The third part is the decentralized-ish nature of Bitcoin's code contribution. The way code is written and the way that code is accepted by both miners and the nodes. So each of these three parts kind of checks the other. So even if one of the three parts is fully corrupted, fully centralized by a single entity, it does not mean that Bitcoin is centralized. So what I'm saying is, if 90% of all Bitcoin mining happened by one company, Bitcoin will still be decentralized. Mining centralization does not centralize Bitcoin because those miners will not be able to do anything if the fully validating nodes are not going to accept what they're mining. Okay, we've had 51% mining centralization several occasions. Bitfury was doing it for like God knows how long back in 2010, and we had an incident in 2013, and it didn't matter at all. Now, the nodes are also pretty damn decentralized, and it's a concern if the blockchain gets too big and the number of nodes go down. Because if the number of nodes is too small, then controlling 51% of mining with very few nodes, they're not going to keep the system decentralized. Code is also an issue. If there was a single entity or a single programmer with all the power, code is centralized. But code centralized alone will not centralize Bitcoin because the nodes don't have to accept that change and the miners don't have to accept that change, and they can still be mining for the users with code that no one actually updates. So in order for Bitcoin to be centralized, not only is each of the three parts have to be more than 51% controlled by a single person or entity, the same person or entity has to control 51% of all three parts independently. Now, I can make the case that Bcash or Bitcoin Cash has a single person or entity that has 51% control or say in each of those three parts. We all know who that person or entity is. I can make the same argument for N-Chain and Bitcoin SV. Okay, I cannot make the same argument for Ethereum yet because Ethereum still has mining, and the mining in Ethereum is somewhat decentralized. I can certainly make the argument that the code has no decentralization whatsoever. It's a small group of people, and what they say basically goes. And it's so hard to run a node on Ethereum that the only thing that's keeping Ethereum decentralized is basically the nodes. Now, the problem is that once Ethereum goes proof of stake, that decentralization, that part of Ethereum is gone. So if your project has no proof of work mining, you cannot possibly be more decentralized than Bitcoin. Because if you eliminate proof of work mining, all you have is nodes and code. If those nodes are producing more coins, that's fine. That's irrelevant, right? That's still the same part of the triangle. Whether those nodes are proof of stake, proof of importance, proof of existence. I heard Jimmy Song once say proof of planting trees. It doesn't really matter. You have nodes, that's one part of decentralization, you have code. Now, when it comes to something like Cardano that has no proof of work at all, they cannot possibly be more decentralized. They're down to two parts. I can easily make the argument that Cardano's code is controlled by a single person or a single entity, being Charles Hoskinson. So now that part is centralized. The only thing they have left is the nodes. And they have to find a way to have the nodes be decentralized. Now, just because they have more nodes than Bitcoin is irrelevant, because Bitcoin has three elements of decentralization, okay? Whether if Bitcoin has 20,000 nodes, it's still more decentralized than Cardano's 100 billion nodes, because they have two more elements to their decentralization. So if those nodes are actually, the moment they get controlled by, the moment 51% of the stake is being created by a single entity, it's over. You're fully centralized. So my argument will be as follows. Those are my criteria for decentralization. And I am happy to make the argument in front of whoever, senators, that every single crypto project in the crypto space, other than Bitcoin, is either already centralized or is trending towards centralization. No one is trending away from centralization. You're only trending towards it, okay? You could start out fully centralized, have a little bit of element of decentralization, and then you're gonna start your curve back down towards centralization. So that's how, that would be my argument on that. And I just wanna point out part 5 really quick. I do not believe in this. I do not believe that a decentralized oracle has ever existed, currently exists, or ever will. I don't believe in this concept. So once again, if I was to be put in front of Congress to give my professional opinion, I would say a decentralized oracle is actually impossible. And when Chainlink implodes, it will prove it once again, just like Augur wasn't able to do it.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and so I think that it's kind of, it's like on the decentralized oracle piece, I think it's a work in progress, right? I think that's very interesting for me. Has anyone really pulled it off in a way that I could say, wow, that is completely decentralized and cannot be attacked? I would say not really. I would say that it's still a work in progress. But where I disagree with Tone is that I also believe that Bitcoin could be taken down. But that is a debate. I think that on the decentralized cryptographic ledger, this was hard because this was a really hard one for me, because when I was putting this together, like Tone, I had so much to say about it, and I had this huge list. And when I was putting the bill together, it was really great because Gozer's chief of staff and legislative counsel really helped me kind of trim it down to these 8 points. But I do think that there are others, and this could evolve. And so the whole point of proposing the bill is to get commentary and to get feedback. But yeah, I agree. I think that one thing that was really important to me was 4F was an irreversible bearer commodity with all transactions being final, and also E, permissionless, requiring no third party to transact. These are kind of.
Wait a minute. Can we go back to that one? The transactions being final. So Ethereum proved that their transactions are not final, and yet someone at the SEC said he thinks they're decentralized. So what do you do?
so this is interesting. So this is interesting because Ethereum Classic did prove that there is a level of decentralization, right? Because Ethereum Classic, this is a very interesting case because on one hand you have Vitalik saying, I think that we should roll it back. I think that we should hard fork. And you're showing, and in that time, 6 years ago, Ethereum showed, was it 6 years ago or 5 years ago? I think it was actually 5 years, 2015 DAO, right? And so, or maybe it was 2014.
I think it was 2016.
Was it 2016? Wow, time flies. So anyways, a few years ago, the DAO happened, and the people that were building DAO knew this flaw existed, and so they created kind of like a very hacky workaround, which was if it happens, we have a period of time to resolve it. And ultimately what happened during that period of time to resolve was a hard fork, and that created Ethereum Classic. So I would argue and say that it was decentralized in that sense, but what people thought would happen versus what happened in reality were two different things. You had two different camps go off,
right?
Classic and Ethereum.
But Ethereum Classic is an altcoin of Ethereum. Now, if Ethereum Classic had the branding and kept the ETH ticker, I would agree with you. But that's not what happened.
But this is a general problem in the industry as a whole. And may I just point out that we were all relying on CoinMarketCap.com, and that was kind of one of the big problems because see, CoinMarketCap.com, and now is becoming even bigger debate with Binance acquiring CoinMarketCap.com, is where is the central source of truth? And I agree with you. They should have fought to say, no, we're ETH. We are ETH. And when you look it up, CoinMarketCap should have created some UX around which ETH are you talking about. But it was so confusing, and you had one team that acquiesced and said, okay, we'll be the ETC dev team. But yeah, I agree. And I'm sure, for the record, Craig Wright and Roger Ver would say, I should be allowed to be the original BTC, which I'm sure you would debate with. But I do think that...
Well, it's not that. I mean, they were doing it, right? I mean, Roger was selling people
on
Bitcoin Cash, telling people that it's Bitcoin, and I'm surprised there's no, class action lawsuit.
There is.
Good.
Yeah, good. As far as I know. But that is the whole issue in terms of ethics and in terms of, that's more of an FTC issue, in my opinion. That's a mislabeling issue. And that's why I put in here, and to go back to the cryptocurrencies, the stablecoins piece, that's why I made the decentralized, the asset-backed versus the synthetic-backed, because I think there should be a consumer warning when you're interacting with synthetic. And I think synthetic should really tell you, and the same thing, I guess, with BCH or BSV, it should be clear that this is not part of Bitcoin Core. We allege that we are continuing Satoshi's values, et cetera, but it's not Bitcoin Core, right? And I think that that's really important. That was the first panel I think you and I spoke on. What is the future with Bitcoin? We both agreed Bitcoin Core, right? But not to say that I don't think there's other futures with other chains, but I think in terms of the original ideals of Bitcoin, I think it's done a pretty good job. And it's interesting, too, you mentioned the three prongs. It kind of reminds me of the government. You've got executive, judicial, and legislative, right? That kind of protect the powers of the United States, right?
Right. Now, two of them are a little screwed up. But
did we not prove that it could be subverted? I guess I'm just kidding. But,
I don't have
half joking.
I don't have a problem with the executive branch. I'm fine with that one. I'm not very happy with the choices we get to vote for the executive branch. That could have been done a little bit better. But I certainly have my problems with the legislative branch, the biggest one being term limits. Those people really need term limits. And they can't be there. They shouldn't be there forever. That's one problem. And my problem with the court system, not necessarily the Supreme Court itself, but the general problem with the court system is basically the jury. Everyone should be able to get a jury trial, and the jury selection, I'm not thrilled with, and the way judges get elected, I'm not thrilled with. Judges should be voted upon, by lawyers that speak in front of those judges, that's who should decide, who the judges become. So there's lots of issues there, but hey, it's still one of the best systems in the world, so I shouldn't complain too much.
Absolutely. And I think that, and I guess we can kind of wrap on this. I think that Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies like Proton, for example, or Ethereum, I think that they complement each other in the way that all of these things, and Gavin Andreessen, one of the original Bitcoin core devs, said this: Bitcoin is an economic experiment. And I think in allowing to have this experimentation from Bitcoin's governance to, say, Proton's governance or Ethereum's governance, I think that it's really cool in the sense that they really do rely on each other in many ways. The people that are developing Bitcoin, they are looking at other blockchains, they are looking at other things that are happening. And then I also think that I can tell you uncategorically that every cryptocurrency that is not Bitcoin that has ever come to exist owes their genesis to Bitcoin and looks at Bitcoin for ways to be more resilient and things like that, including SegWit, SegWit went to Litecoin, other blockchains, right? And I think it's really cool because in many ways, many of us got into Bitcoin and cryptocurrency for this vision of decentralized governance and decentralized systems that were truly free from one source kind of controlling them. And I think that's what Tone really does not like about some of these projects that have so much control. But I think over time we're getting there, we're getting closer. And I also agree that a lot of these kind of scammy projects that came here to our industry, to our space, just to rip us off and to rip people off, we really need to stop them, and we really need to have better legislation, better regulation around this. And I'm not for creating onerous regulation, but I do believe that I think it is kind of what Tone has done and what I have done, speaking out and saying what we feel about things that maybe are not popular to other people in our industry is the right thing to do, just to stand up for what's right. Because in general, Congress does not know a lot about blockchain, a lot about Bitcoin, and they are relying on experts. They are relying on people to come forward. And today, this podcast, I think, was really awesome because it highlights some really healthy discourse between two people in the space who have been here for a long time and very knowledgeable, but agree in many ways, but disagree in other ways. And I think it's good for people to see that.
Yeah, no, thanks, man. I had a good chat. I will probably be covering this bill. I have a law show coming up. I don't remember if we've covered this bill before on the law show, but I'll go through this bill with the lawyers. The show is a week from today, and that should be fun. And next week, I'm going to try and write up that article about what it means to be decentralized. I'll shoot that over to you once that's done.
That would be great. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Tone. And feel free to have me if you want me to comment on my bill or anything like that. But let's not be strangers. It's been so many years since we've spoken, so really good to see your face.
Are you still in SF?
I'm still in SF, but in 7 days, I'm going to become an official resident of Los Angeles because I just can't live in this overpriced apartment anymore, and I've got to go get some fresh air and have a pool. So I just bought a house.
Wait. Weren't you just aren't you being like referred to as like the youngest Bitcoin billionaire? Like, what the hell?
That was actually Eric Finman, and I think people confused us. But he's actually the youngest Bitcoin millionaire. I'm actually somebody said this and said, could Marshall have moved the coins? That was a really funny Cointelegraph article because I didn't have any input in
that was, by the way,
just asked me, did I do it?
But by the way, so
we're
we
close
covered
to the same age, Tone.
We covered that story and on our news show, and we saw that like one of the arbiters could Marshall Hayner move the coins? And my answer was, wasn't he like 12? There's no way it was Marshall Hayner.
Well, I can say there was no way it was me, but I was in my 20s. I was 26, right? So, but yeah, I look so young. Everybody always thinks that I'm like 13 or something. In about 10 years, I'll be really happy with that. So, no complaints.
Oh, wait, so they said you were 26 or you are 26?
No, I'm 36 now.
Oh, you're 36 now, right? You were 26 when it was mine, right?
Yeah,
right,
so
right.
It could have been me, but I was.
Wait, are you serious? You're 36? You look about 25 now.
I know. God was, he was nice to me. What can I say? But Yeah, I think we're around the same age. You might be like a year or two older than me, I think, but
Yeah, I don't like giving away my age
yeah,
because like I'm such a giant hack target. It's insane.
same.
It's bad. Plus, not to mention how many haters I have. So I try to disclose as little information as possible.
Of
But
course,
yeah, I
of
have a
course.
few years on you, but not that
Yeah.
many.
Yeah. Everybody, I saw that recording and I was laughing so hard because that article came out with like not like I had no, somebody messaged me and was like, was it you? And I was like, no. And the article came out and it's super funny. But yeah, it's, man, Tone, it's so good to see you. And over the years, let's always stay in touch. And for people watching this, Tone and I have been very, very passionate about this space. And when you're looking to to hear some of these early stories, look to people like Tone and I. Look to people that over the years don't come in and do some ICO and just disappear, or come in and say they all know about blockchain and they're so excited. Look for the people that have true passion like Tone and I, and look for the stuff that's really moving policy forward and really analyzing things with a critical eye. And even though Tone and I disagree, I will say that I have so much respect for you, Tone, with the stance that you have taken and everything that you've done. And I love your passion, and I think our viewers do as well. So thank you
Yeah.
again for coming on
Thanks
today.
a lot, man. And then lately I've been really going off on, these anonymous Twitter handles, with
A frog on Twitter told somebody to buy Dogecoin.
Right, some cryptic name, some random picture, because they have no accountability. They can say anything they like, and like no one can hold them accountable because no one knows who they are because they're anonymous. And lately, I'm just like trying to advise people, even if your favorite anonymous Twitter handle has 30,000 followers, you want to be real careful because those people will never, ever be held accountable to anything they do or say because they're anonymous. And they don't really matter. But you, like myself, have been out there in the public. So if we say or do something, the world will hold us accountable forever. Won't be able to get away from it.
That's exactly right. If a frog on Twitter tells you to buy Dogecoin, it's probably unregistered financial advice. And don't go buy cryptocurrency because somebody told you to. Go play with it, have fun, learn. And if somebody's anonymous and they're saying, do X, Y, and Z, chances are they probably are on the other side of that trading against you most of the time.
All right, guys, I'm going to plug my event in Las Vegas called Unconfiscatable. So you're going to be in LA. That's a short drive. So
I will be there.
We were one of the last conferences. We were one of the last big Bitcoin conferences before COVID. It was at the end of February. It was like the last weekend in February. We did that conference. I was at one more conference after that down in South Africa, and then barely got out of there. I was on the plane coming back to the U.S. from South Africa at the end of March, and when I landed, basically all international travel shut down. So talk about being on the last flight out. It was a 16-hour flight. There wasn't a single empty seat on that plane. It was, but yeah. So next February, end of February, hopefully people can get together again, and we'll do it. I have two other events: Understanding Bitcoin in Malta, which is being kind of airs. I will already announce that this year, and it'll be to September of next year. And there is a financial event in Bali, which should still happen later this year, but we'll see.
Excellent. So you heard it here first. Be there or be square. February 2021 Unconfiscatable Bitcoin conference. Tone Vays, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.